Okay, so in a horror film, what would you say is more important to having or contributes most to it? Having jump scares scattered around, or spending the entire film or half of it building up tension to hit this really big kind of climactic jump scare-ish
Yeah,
event?
as the thing as I've said, it's more of a challenge, and once it's achieved, it's really sort of what people really want is the sort of the longer, drawn out, as I said, this feel of unease, making the audience feel anxious, rather than the jump scare. I do enjoy the jump scares, as anyone who watches horror films, part of the thing with horror films, I mean, there are some really horrific horror films out there, but the majority of them are fun as well. People enjoy being scared, which includes the jump scare as well. So I'm not anti-jump scare. I do enjoy them, and there are times where they've even got me. But the more impressive way of making a horror film is the longer sort of layering up, the tension and the fear, and actually building something big rather than something that's a short burst.
Okay, you watch a lot of horror films. What would you say is the one thing that every horror, maybe not every horror film, but all the ones that you like the most has in common that kind of makes it a good horror film?
Okay, again, that's a really, really good question, because it sort of depends on the horror films that you enjoy watching. As I said, there's different types of horror. I mean, some of my personal favourite horror films are actually made towards the end of the 70s. I don't know what it is about them. I just enjoy horror films from that era. I think partly because, I mean, even watching some of the more modern horror films, there's one in particular, and if you want, I could name it for you, but one of the reasons why I sort of prefer the older ones rather than some of the really recent ones is just because of just how society is today. We've all got mobile phones, we're all connected, the internet, whatever. Someone is in trouble, and they've got their phone on them, they can phone for rescue, whereas in the 70s, or as I said, a couple of my favourites, it's like if you're out on your own in a remote area, you're cut off, you've got no way of, you've got to face whatever you're facing yourself. And one thing that I hate with current horror films, and in fact, do you know what, there's countless examples, but I'll give you the one I was trying not to name. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, which was from a few years ago, which is one of the most awful horror films I've ever seen. But again, you've got victims that are stranded out in the middle of nowhere, just like in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, except obviously we're set in the present. They have their mobile phones, but guess what? There's no reception. It's like, how many horror films are going to pull that off? It's just become a bit of a cliche now. I mean, even like films in the 70s are cliches, but it's let's have a bit more imagination these days.
Okay, so regarding any villains or murderers, whatever the bad guy's meant to be in a horror film, would you prefer to go into it and just this deranged serial killer be that because the story needed it, or would you want to see a small background to him, as if how did this happen? Was he abused as a child or locked in a mental asylum? Stuff like that. Would you prefer that backstory, even if it's kind of short and to the point, over the he's here because he's here?
Again, it depends. I mean, I've not got any personal preference. I mean, it has been done with sort of both approaches, and it's been done well with both approaches. It's partly down to what you want to give the, it's like when you make a film, and this isn't just for horror films, this is for films in general. You've written the script, you're shooting this film, you're telling a story, and you're the one who controls the information, the trickle of information to the audience. Yeah. So you can either give them the whole, this is so and so, he's going around killing people, and this is why, which might be, look, he was a victim himself, and society has made him this monster. Or even, equally as creepy is here's this lunatic running around killing people, no one knows why. I mean, to me, that's even scarier, because if you look, and again, going back to the older horror films, you've got this backstory. You can sort of understand why this monster that's hunting people down has become the way he is, and to an extent, you sort of feel sorry for him. He's, you know, it's like a victim, sort of trying to, I suppose, get his revenge. Whereas what's even creepier is the fact that, right, here's someone who's just going around doing these horrible things and no one knows why. No one knows what he's thinking. You know, again, it's, both approaches are valid, both approaches are being done well. It depends on what your personal preference is as the storyteller. You know, do you want to spoon feed all that information to your audience, or you just want to hit them with everything and let them answer all the questions?
Okay, thanks for your help.